Well, hello Big Bear family.
Hi.
Tonight we're going on a haunted town tour in Barbourville, Kentucky. Will it be scary? Or will it be just a boring trip? Well, let's find out and let's get on it, okay?
Yeah.
Alright guys, you ready to go on a haunted town tour? Are we ready to be scared or
I don't want
disappointed?
To be scared, but yeah.
Disappointed.
Sure.
Well, let's find out, guys. We'll see you in a little bit.
Oh, I've been asleep, sorry.
Mom, quit.
Okay, then.
We're really early. Hi. I see the middle school over there where Kelsey goes. Is it hot? 7:50 Barbourville.
Hey, Kayla. We're at the haunted tour.
I got my Michael Jordan shirt on and feel the shoes.
Hey, Mommy. We're in front of the fire.
Does this match?
It's my golf stove.
With pillows?
Yeah, sure.
I don't think they match. I'm famous in my school now.
Are you?
Everybody's saying, oh, you have a Big Bear. They say Big Bear family and stuff. And then Grady said, he would watch every video. He said he watched every video of the Big Bear.
Let me got her some hot chocolate.
It's good.
You take,
Melted chocolate chips in it.
yeah, it did, didn't it? Melted chocolate chips. That sounds good. Yeah, buddy. So far, it ain't real spooky, is it?
No.
Kelsey got her some too.
She's already down hers.
Oh man, she's already drunk hers. She's inhaled it.
Okay, get over here, son.
Tonight, we wish to honor the history of Barbourville, also speaking to the time-honored tradition of Halloween. And Barbourville has plenty of great ghost stories to tell. I've actually learned a few myself this week by putting all of this together. Tonight, we will use the power of storytelling to travel back in time and imagine what life might have been like for the residents of Barbourville. Meanwhile, we'll get a taste of what many of our residents have reported experiencing over the town for the past 158 years. And maybe some of you will have some experiences of your own to tell. To get us in the proper mood and setting, I would like to set the scene by telling you a story from our history book. The Barbourville of the past decades differed little in appearance from other numerous small towns nestled in the western hills of the Appalachian Divide. This metropolis of southeastern Kentucky boasted a population of approximately 450 souls, 3 brick buildings, a new courthouse, and at least 2 churches. Dust governed the summer and fall seasons, with King Mud reigning the remainder of the year. What passed for sidewalks consisted of parallel planks or split logs thrown lengthwise in the oozing mud, and crossings were built of stepping stones. on edge which only the nimble and the daring could use. A few kerosene street lamps, rarely lighted, threw a few meager beams for those willing to accept the hazards of night excursions. Communication by telegraph or telephone had not yet been established with the outside world. People still had to travel many miles to hear the scream of the iron horse, and transportation could be had only by hack, sled, horseback, or on foot. Your tour this evening will begin with the original Barbourville Cemetery. That will be your first stop. We have 9 stops along the tour. There will be 9 different people there ready to tell you their story. So, where's Miss Emily? Miss Emily has her hand up in the back. She will take out the originally scheduled 8:15 group, and then I'll have someone else coming back to get the 8:30 just after. Yes, I do. Okay.
So I kind of forgot about the 8:15. Who's going to tell them that story? Which one? The 8:15 group. Okay, hold you on. Hold you on. This is going to be the funnest trip of all time.
If you look closely behind me, you'll see that no grass can grow here. And if you look at that street next to us and imagine it was once called Hoyt Avenue, it's now called Corgi Lane. From that street all the way to the Methodist Church was a cemetery. All of the property that you see here was full of graves. Now if you'll turn that way, you will see Speed Hall, and on beyond it is the old Soldiers and Sailors Memorial. And what you perceive to be Union College's campus was also a graveyard. It was the Anderson Dallas family graveyard, and there was a small apple orchard in the area too, but mostly graveyard. Now, Union College was established in 1879. If you'll look at this stone here, 1864. So they face this graveyard. But as Union College began to grow, they had a need for more property. And where do you think they got the property? From the graveyards. They annexed that property and they dug up the bodies and the graves and the bones, and they moved them to the new Barbourville Cemetery, which we call the new cemetery, but it's been there since 1930. Now they didn't raise all of the graves and move all of them because some of them were actually unmarked. If you walk down that lane there, which is paved with brick, and you make a left turn and you go straight to Manchester Street, you would be walking down the old Hangman's Lane, because it was a lane and bordered by tall trees, strong trees, and that's where they hanged their criminals. Did you know that? Wow, and when they hung them there, they cut them down and they buried them where they fell in unmarked graves. Pretty gory, but that's what happened. So, when Union College moved all of those, they didn't get everybody. So, possibly what's here may contain the restless spirit of people who were never moved and have been overlooked for many years. Now, the people that live along this street, on College Street, and especially on Corgi Lane, they say they have an eerie feeling on October 31st that they feel something that's not quite right in the air. They see shadows that look longer from the trees, and they see wisps of smoke, maybe mist, maybe fog, maybe my breath. You see that? Or maybe a restless spirit from those left behind. Thank you for coming. Please watch your step as you go, because you probably will be stepping on a
Like I said, I was a tour guide here. It goes against everything I know is walking on the grass here. Freaks me out. Guys, keep coming over.
Welcome.
Oh, don't get me.
Alright. The Legend of Speed Hall. When Speed Hall was first built, it was a women's residence hall. It had a reputation for being full of the finest and most upstanding ladies in all of Knox County, as well as in all the college. In those days, there was a lot of pressure on being a woman in college. It wasn't common then for women to be earning degrees. The women in Speed Hall, though respected and admired, also faced a lot of criticism, persecution, and overwhelming demand. This caused much self-doubt in the women who lived there. There was one young lady in particular who took the pressures extremely personally. She was never truly happy there. One night she received a telegram informing her that her father had died. The grief was just too much. She had told her hallmates that the reason she was in college was because her father wanted her to make something of herself. He was a coal miner and worked hard for a living. He was proud of his job and his work ethic, but he wanted his only child to have things better than he did. So he had scrimped and saved until he could send her to school. She felt that he was the only one who ever really believed in her, and when she got the word of his death, her world fell apart. She went to her room, packed her things, and everyone assumed she was getting ready to go home for the funeral in the morning. But when they went to her room to check on her, they found that the door was locked. They went, and the door mother got into the room. There they found the girl hanging from the rafters in the ceiling. On her bed was a note that read, "My father's death is my death. He lived through me, I have died through him." After the body was removed and the room cleared out, that door was locked, never to be used again. The window is the one that faces what is now Harper Hall. Many times people have reported walking across campus at night and seeing a light on in that window. Some have even seen a figure hanging in the window. What's really peculiar is that no one can get into that room to turn the light on because room 317 is still locked, and now even has a padlock on it. The third floor of Speed Hall is now just an attic used for storage, but people say that, especially in October, that if you walk by at night you can hear the crying and see the image of the girl hanging from the window. Speed Hall Ghost and Ed Douglas. In June of 1999, Safety Officer Ed Douglas needed to go up to the attic of Speed Hall around 2 a.m. He was helping Brian Fredericks, a faculty member, look at some of the college's historical documents. While Brian was reading documents, Ed was moving boxes. all of a sudden he began to feel very cold. This was particularly strange because it was over 100 degrees in the attic. When Ed looked over at Brian, he was sweating profusely. Ed continued to get colder until he had goosebumps all over his body. When he asked Brian if he felt cold, Brian said that he was burning up. At that moment, Ed decided that he needed to be somewhere else rather than the attic. In July of 1999, Ed was turning out lights and checking doors at about 3 a.m. When he reached Speed Hall, he entered through the side entrance that's closest to the library. He walked clockwise to the first floor and was turning left to go out the front door. At the bottom of the big staircase, he saw something to his right side. He described what he saw as the feet, legs, and waist of a woman. He knew that these things were not supposed to be there, so he did not look up and kept walking. As a result of both of these experiences, he will not go into Speed Hall at night unless there is an emergency. Ed checks the outer doors of the building and then continues with his rounds. Thank you.
Yay! True story.
True story.
What?
Why do you think
What?
Ed was out at 2 and 3
Like that?
every night putting boxes in that
I have no idea why they would want to check his story.
Welcome to Pfeiffer Hall. The legend of Pfeiffer Hall until the fall of 1999. Pfeiffer has always been a female residence hall. The story goes that not long ago after the hall opened, there was a young lady that lived here that was head over heels in love with a young gentleman. She would tell her roommate of all the wonderful dates they had, of his chivalrous acts, and how someday they planned to marry. He was her life. She loved him more than she loved anything or anybody, including herself. Months passed, and every day her love grew for him. But as time passed, it seemed that his love for her was fading. One day he confessed that he no longer loved her, and that he didn't wish to pursue the relationship any further. She was crushed, and her heart was broken. She spent several nights alone in her room, mourning and wailing. She was inconsolable. It was as if he had killed her soul. Finally, one night, she could no longer bear the agony, and in her long white nightgown, she lay in her bed and cut her wrists with a razor blade. It's told that a cold breeze went through the building that night, and people who lived there claimed that they had heard crying and moaning, but they thought the girl was still grieving the loss of her love. The next day, they found her dead, and she was taken home for a proper burial. But the nights that passed were still filled with the inconsolable moaning coming from her room. To this day, people say that sometimes they see her walking up and down the halls in Pfeiffer, wearing a white gown stained with blood. They say that she stays there to warn others of the pain of heartbreak. There have been times where girls have been getting ready for a date in their room, and a cold breeze runs through. They hear a haunting moan, or they actually see an image of a woman in white standing in the doorway. So I guess the question remains whether it really is better to have loved and lost, or to never have loved at all.
Did you live in Pfeiffer Hall?
I did live in Pfeiffer Hall.
Did you ever see a woman in a white gown?
I luckily did not see the woman.
Sorry. Union. This actually used to be, well, this is a gym. Downstairs used to be a swimming pool.
Oh, ain't there no more?
Oh, wow.
Really?
Keep.
Oh, I have to sit my way in. Eat my lunch and put it in. No, come right up. You're a good girl. Okay. Well, hello everybody. I'm Reagan. I'm a junior at Barbourville Independent, and this is the Ramsey Center. It's Union's nursing school. And does anyone know what this was before it became the nursing school?
Hospital.
Yeah, it was the old hospital. Now, my great-grandma worked here and my great-uncle worked here, and they were both nurses. And when we started talking about doing this ghost tour, I knew they were the people to call to get some stories on this place. So I called my great-uncle, and he spent most of his time here as a kid as well with my great-grandma, and he told me some of the scariest things. He said the most two haunted rooms were the ICU room and the isolation room. The ICU room, nurses would go in there every day, and they would go and they would make beds, they would tidy up, and they'd go to another room for 5 minutes. They'd come back, the beds would be a mess. They'd be ripped apart, and everything they just tidied up would be everywhere. You know, they blamed it on the ghosts, but truly there was no explanation for this. They would walk by the ICU room and they would hear laughing, talking, giggling. They'd go in, not a soul there. The isolation room is what I believe to be even more scary. They would hear bangs after bangs. They would hear laughing, they would hear screaming, sometimes they'd hear talking. And after the nurses got enough courage to go into these rooms, no one would be there. Everything would be ordered, and everything was fine. What I believe to be the scariest and most peculiar, though, is the shadow figure that would go room to room. They called it the ghost nurse, and they just laugh it off, but I don't believe so. I believe I'd call this the Grim Reaper visiting his next victim. Now, this hospital, it shut down towards the 80s, and it was vacant for a couple years, and then it became the nursing school. But even after it became the Ramsey Center, it wasn't able to escape the hauntings. You see, you can look in there and you can see that glass room. I don't know if you can see it from where you're sitting, but I know some of you can. Well, one day they had a leak in this room. This was the earlier years of this nursing facility opening. They had a leak in that room. It made a little puddle. And they're like, okay, we'll just come back the next day and we'll clean it up and stuff and get it fixed. So they come back that next morning. May I remind you, this is a nursing school at a college. There's no business for a kid to be here, especially after hours. So they come into this nursing school, and there's little footprints of a child just coming out of nowhere, coming out of that room, walking through the hallway, almost as if the ghosts of the kids that died here during polio, chickenpox, measles are running around at night. Now, I got one last story for you about this place, and I believe it's the scariest. So, a security guard was working here one night, and she was doing her rounds. She was making sure no one was in here, and she was about to leave. As she was about to leave, she hears a toilet flush. She goes back. She thinks she might just be hearing things. She goes back. She goes to check in, and no one's there. So she's leaving again. She's leaving again. She's like, oh, I'm just hearing things. And then the toilet flushes again. So she goes back in, and she's like, is anyone in here? Is anyone in here? No one responds. So she decides to go into the stall itself. She goes into the stall itself, and lo and behold, no one's in there. But next thing she knows, the stall closes and locks behind her. She got out, obviously, to tell the story. But this is why I believe this is one of the most haunted places in Barbourville. Thank you.
That's fantastic.
Oh, here we go again.
Wait, how much is it? I don't know. Mom, Daddy, how much is it?
I got some more.
Holy crap, it's not. You're on the sidewalk. Like, instead, oh my god, it's so hot. Let me get in the car. You have to turn the heat on.
Oh, yeah.
God, it's cold.
Welcome to our story number 7 tonight. Whether you realize it or not, you're probably standing in the exact location of the hangings that used to happen in Knox County. Hangings happened in Knox County from 1805 to 1907. And tonight I'm going to tell you the story of Jesse Fitzgerald, and he was the last man that was hung in Knox County. Jesse worked up on Ely Holler, and if you're from this area, you know where Ely Holler is, and he was a coal miner. One day Jesse was working, and it was at the end of the week, and it was payday. Well, there was this man that worked with Jesse, and his name was Robert Broughton. Well, it just so happened that Robert decided he's going to spend the weekend at Ely Holler, and I'm assuming there was like a mining camp up there, and they could spend the weekend and work all weekend and not come home. So Jesse overheard Robert talking about sending his payday home with a friend to his wife Martha Broughton. Well, so he did that. So that night, Jesse just so happened, Jesse's girlfriend Annie worked as a housekeeper for Martha. Martha was Robert's wife. So Jesse and Anna got together, and they decided Annie knew where the money was, and she decided that they would rob his property, and they would run away, they would get married, and they would live happily ever after. So that night, that's what they did. Well, in the middle of the robbery, Martha caught Jesse stealing her money. So her and Jesse began to get in a scuffle. They began to wrestle around and fight and stuff. And they were in the kitchen. And on the kitchen table happened to be laying a big old butcher knife. Well, Jesse grabbed the butcher knife and he slit Martha's throat wide open. So Annie was there with him, and she said, "Hey, I'm not having no part of this. I had no part of this murder. I'm not going to jail. I'm not going." He said, "Please go with me. Just run away. Go with me." No, she said, "I'm not going with you." So he runs off, and he runs toward Artemis Road. Well, Jesse he runs toward Artemis Road. Well, the authorities, they catch up with him, and they arrest him. They bring him back to Knox County Jail. Now, this is not the jail they brought him to. This jail was built after the old one was torn down, but the old jail's where they brought him to. And if you were, I remember the old jail, and it's pretty much right back here. So we could be standing on the side of where the hangings actually did happen, because they were very close to the jail. So they brought him here, and he was so mean, they couldn't keep him in Knox County Jail. So they sent him by train to Mount Vernon. He would stay at Mount Vernon until his trial date. The National Guards went and got him. They brought him back to trial over Knox County. Well, he was sentenced to murder. He was accused of, he was found guilty of murdering Robert's wife, Martha. He was found guilty of murdering her. Well, his girlfriend, Annie, she was found guilty of complicity to the murder, so she was sent to jail for 15 years for her part that she played in it. So it came time for the hanging day. So the National Guards head back up to Mount Vernon. They bring him back that morning. Well, in the meantime, all the authorities, they got word that there was going to be trouble, okay, that there was going to be protests, there was going to be large crowds, so they decided they'd get ahead of the game. And you know how some people are, when something is going to take place, they get out and they go get in front of the line, which I'm guilty of that myself. So they decide, hey, his hanging was scheduled for noon that day. So they decide that they're going to hang him at 7:12 that morning. Well, at 7:12 that morning, there was already 300 people gathered around where this hanging was going to take place. 300 people at 7:12 in the morning. And included in that crowd was Martha's husband, Robert. He was in that crowd also. So they go ahead. They could proceed with the hanging. Jesse, he steps firm foot upon that. It's called a gallows. They called it a gallows. It's where that trap door was, where the hanging took place. He climbed up there, firm foot. So they got ready to put that, that black hood they put around on their heads when they're going to hang them. Well, he says, don't put that over my eyes. I want to see. They asked him, did he have any last words? Well, he didn't have any last words. The night before, though, he did acquit Annie. He said, Annie had nothing to do with this. It was all me. That's the only thing I'm going to say. That's all he had to say. The night before, he said, Annie had nothing to do with it. So I don't know whether Annie got out of jail early or if she didn't get out of jail early, but he acquitted her because he said she had no part in it, but even though she was found guilty. So they proceeded with the hanging. 7:12, February the 15th, 1907. It was the last hanging in Knox County. So a sheriff named Sheriff Williams, he's actually the one that pulled that trap door that caused Jesse to fall and break his neck and it hung him. He was dead within 10 minutes. 7:12, 7:24, gone just like that. Well, and it's kind of ironic because about 5 days before his hanging, a group from Union College went and talked to him and they said, Jesse, we want to buy your skeletal remains for our science lab. We want to buy your skeletal remains. He sold his skeletal remains. And to this very day, if you'll go over to Union College in the science lab, you'll find the skeletal remains of Jesse Fitzgerald over there in the science lab. Huh. And I want to tell you one more thing. So if you're driving down Sycamore Street over here and you have this really eerie feeling around your neck, don't think you're the only person that's ever felt that, because it's either the spirit or the ghost of Jesse Fitzgerald. I hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my gosh.
I don't know.
So, is this my last group, Peter? This my last group?
This is the 8th one. Calm down, my feet up close. Oh God, it's freezing.
Huh?
Scary.
That was a pretty good story right there, wasn't it?
Chocolate.
Much bigger group than the last one had like 4 people in it. Well, hey, I'm John. So, y'all enjoying your story so far? Yeah. So, how many of y'all know what the Hatfields and McCoys is? Anybody?
Yeah.
No. Did y'all know that Barbourville had their own Hatfields and McCoys?
Yeah, they live next door to us.
So, there was, back in 1907, there was 2 families, the Baileys and the Campbells. There were 2 brothers from the Bailey family. They killed one of the brothers from the Campbell family. Well, there was a big trial. The Bailey brothers were held in trial. Barbourville was the epicenter of news for a long time. All eyes in the country were on Barbourville, this grisly murder that these 2 boys committed, murdered somebody in cold blood. Well, they were tried. They were found guilty, but they weren't put to death like everybody thought they should have been. It was grisly murder. They should have been put to death eye for an eye. Y'all know how it is. We're all Appalachians, right? So, seeing as how the Campbells didn't feel that justice was served, this courthouse right here, it looks a little bit different now, but it's the same building. That very day, September 22nd, 1907, one of the Bailey brothers was being let out of the courthouse. And they didn't have all these buildings that they had there now. There was a bunch of bushes and weeds and stuff, and in bushes and weeds, they say there was 1, maybe 3 Campbells waiting. They waited to the right time, and as soon as that Bailey brothers boot hit that top step, bam! Shot him in cold blood. He died right there on the steps. Bled out. Nobody was ever caught, accused, tried, or convicted of killing the Bailey brother, but a lot of people, still some of you may be related to some of the Campbells and Bailey, so You know, they say that justice was served, but like I said, they never caught who did it. That's a true story. 100% true story. Right here in front of me.
He said, seriously. God.
I go up here.
It started out with the horse-drawn carriages, of course, and this was where the stables were that they groomed the horses and kept the carriages and things like that in. And then about 15 years ago, we turned this into what's called the Redbud Quilt Garden. We had a Redbud Quilt Festival here for several years, and we created several things around that had the quilt squares in them, and this is one of them. It serves as just a nice little place to sit and eat, visit, you know, bring your puppies out and walk them through here, and that sort of thing. And I think there was some more history that took place here, a killing or whatever. I just don't know that part of it. I'm not sure where the guy is that's supposed to be doing this, so if you want to, we can just go on over that way and finish up.
I have a question.
Well, hello.
Hello. Excuse me.
You're rude.
Kelsey. Samuel.
Hi.
Samuel.
We're at the Barbourville Pizza
We like Pizza Hut.
Well, let's discuss our little haunted ghost story tour last night.
Well, it was neat. We found a lot about community college.
It's loud.
The Barbourville Cemetery was underneath the college.
The college was built onto the cemetery of the original Barbourville Cemetery. Yeah, we learned more history than we did spooky stuff, though, didn't we, last night?
Of course, you know, the hospitals are probably all haunted.
Probably. And where there's a graveyard once was, there's probably tales of hauntings there.
There's probably dead people under a lot, probably under a
Can I tell my
lot
theory
of places.
about the toilet whenever the girl, the sheriff or something, the security guard, the thing shut on it?
The hospital.
The hospital.
You know what my theory is? Like,
What?
the person was really sick, and they probably like was using the bathroom, and they like died on the toilet. So yeah.
But there was nobody in there.
No, like the person long ago, whenever they were very sick, their spirit could.
You know what my theory is behind the toilet flushing?
What was your theory?
My theory behind the toilet flushing is it had a leak.
It had a leak.
And it automatically flushed. Sometimes that happens because there's valves in them toilets that causes them to flush. So
They made it scary
yeah, I know.
Because what hurt the toilet seat went.
And just like the chills, you can be so hot. Like that man was telling about it being 100 degrees in the attic. You know what he was doing? He was getting ready to have a heat stroke.
Who?
The guy in the attic that was having the heat chills. I think he was having a heat stroke. Because when you have a heat stroke, you get chills. And you're cold.
Quit ruining it. You're boring.
Hey, I'm a skeptic. I don't believe in ghosts.
I believe in spirits.
The ghost you believe in is the Holy Ghost.
That's it.
I believe in ghosts. I used to not even believe spirits, but now I do. You know why?
Well, there's a spirit the Bible talks about, and I believe in those spirits, but
Because there was like true stories about spirits haunting people.
Yeah.
Like the courage.
But all in all, We enjoyed it.
It was a good exercise walk anyway for you all.
Good exercise walk.
Me, I froze to death. No, I didn't cheat. I froze to death and got beat up. That was a rough ride.
Cheaters never get ahead.
Kelsey, did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
Did you? Really?
She don't like history.
Get off your phone, Mommy's phone, so we can talk. Sam, was it any scary to you?
No.
No.
Let me tell you about. I grabbed it. Stop it. Put it over to me, please. It was also a history lesson for me because it's just true stories.
It very much was a history lesson. The best stories I liked in the whole thing was the first one, and I liked the jailhouse. That was my favorite one. My favorite one was the jailhouse. That woman told it very good. In the first one, she had all the props up. Cause, the cemetery, the first story. Because she was into it. She didn't have nothing to read off of. She had props. She was dressed to the appropriately. I thought it was the neatest one. So she was my favorite.
She was my favorite.
Yours was the hospital?
I believe in ghosts because.
You believe in ghosts? Okay. Well, that was our take of our little supposedly ghost story haunted trip. And so, well, I guess that'll be it for tonight. And we hope you enjoyed the video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did, give us a big thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you ain't subscribed. Share it with your friends, family, neighbors, and whoever else. You guys, we'll see you in the next video. And as always,
Have a big bear day.
Don't have a big birthday.
have a big bear day, guys.
Have a ghost again.